Okay. We're on. Welcome all to episode 74 of the Self-Publishing Roundtable, the podcast for indie authors by indie authors, where we discuss today's topics and issues that matter to the business of the self-published author. I am your moderator, Wade Finnegan, and my co-panelists, as always, are Michelle Reed. Say hello, Michelle. And Xavier Granville.
Hello, Internet.
Our special panelist for this episode is Robert Chazz Chute. Did I say that right, Robert?
That sounds peachy.
Peachy. Robert is the author of suspense and dark fantasy novels. He's won several awards for his work, one of the most recent coming from Writer's Digest. Robert has some great insight about the business of being an author, and as he says, why it sometimes sucks, and will remind us to keep our business hat on through the evening. He also has a thing or two to say about exclusivity with Amazon, and we're going to prime and have him share little things about Kindle Unlimited that he's going to do this year. He also hosts his own podcast, All That Chazz, where he occasionally rants, does some comedy sketches, and some creepy things happen once in a while. So, and it was at some point in the night we are
just a little bit creepy.
A little bit creepy. One point in the night we're going to talk about probably his best book ever, and that's the Self-Help for Stoners. Xavier got really excited about that title, so we'll talk about that, and we'll try to keep the Dorito eating to a minimum. So, Robert, Thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, to everyone watching us live, I hope we got a few live viewers tonight. They're over on the selfpublishingroundtable.com. We encourage you to leave some questions and comments, maybe more questions than comments compared to last week, so we can ask Robert some questions, and we'll try to get you guys in there on the conversation. Also, remember when the show is over to go to iTunes and give us a review, or maybe a thumbs up on YouTube. We also made an announcement this week that we're on Stitcher Radio too, so check us out there. So
Stitcher.
We're all over the place. So, all right. Well,
hey, wait. Does Stitcher still do that thing where if you get a subscriber to Stitcher, they put you in a draw for $100?
What? Is that a real thing, or are you making that up?
No, they used to do that. I haven't heard anything from lately, but that's what they used to do.
I
to
think
get more
subscribers
to Stitcher.
I think it said if you do it, then Robert will give you $100.
I'm pretty sure that was a different Robert. Yeah.
The only thing I know about Stitcher is that I like to say the word Stitcher.
Now, Stitcher is awesome, but you have to sit through an awful lot of ads if you get the free version. So every time you switch to a new podcast, and I listen to several a day, and as I go through my day, and it's Squarespace, and they're trying to sell a Jaguars, I think it is. So, but otherwise, it's a great app.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. Go with the paid version maybe, and don't have all the ads. So I don't know.
Spotify does that too.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it's true. Xavier, you want to kick this baby off? Got a question for Robert?
Oh, sure. Well, I figured, let's just start off with some foreplay, just something simple.
Okay, I'm touching my nipples. Go ahead.
Rub them.
I am.
Boys.
Sorry. Did we also announce that Robert is also Canadian? So this is just some good old-fashioned Canadian humor here. This is what we talk about all the time in the Great North.
That's right. That is
simply.
I'll save you. Yeah.
Please. Okay, just simple question off the top. This will be up on Joe. Who or perhaps what first really inspired you to start writing professionally, and then what brought you to indie publishing?
Oh, well, as long as I can remember, I remember walking into a printer's office when I was like 7 and saying, "I'm going to write a book. Do you have some paper I could?" And they gave me some ends, so brown ends. I don't know why. It's osmotic. My parents' house was full of books, and it just seeped in through there. I'm pretty sure most people have the same kind of experience where it's like, why do we have this infection? I don't know. It's a compulsion. It's an itch we've got to scratch. And And as far as publishing goes, I used to work in traditional publishing. I was a journalist for a while, and then I worked in Toronto and Canadian publishing. So I worked for Harlequin, was my first job in publishing.
Cool.
I worked in production, and then I did some freelance editing, and I worked for several publishers in Toronto, and they're all out of business now, except for Harlequin.
Yeah.
That's pretty neat.
Oh, and what brought me to your third part of your question was what brought me to self-publishing, and it was partly because I worked in traditional publishing, because I've met some really nice and really smart people, too.
Two. That's a good number. Good number.
No, it's just I knew the game, and that a lot of when we talk about you've probably talked about this before, but the whole idea of whether you choose self-publishing or you choose traditional publishing, nobody chooses traditional publishing. Traditional publishing chooses you, and I've got this massive problem with authority. So self-publishing was for me. So I became an independent publisher a few years ago, and I wrote a bunch of stuff for a long time just for the joy of it, which I think a lot of us really need to get back to. I mean, we talk about marketing like almost constantly, and that's important. But getting back to the craft and actually having joy in writing, a lot of people were worried right now so much about how much money we're going to make, how much money we're not making, how much money we're leaving on the table, all this stuff. But as important as all that stuff is, and I'm willing to talk about all that, what gets me is, in a certain sense, it doesn't matter, because we've got this infection. We're going to write anyway. I wrote for free for years without submitting anything to any agent, any publisher, nothing, because I'd worked in traditional publishing. I thought, that's not going to happen. So I just wrote compulsively, and I finished a book, and I put it in a drawer, and I finished another book, and I put that in the drawer, and I just kept on writing, and finally the technology caught up with me, so I was ready when it arrived.
Interesting.
Yeah, I love that sentiment. That you're more so that technology caught up to you, and I think a lot of people are in that ballpark as well, and it's not really something that's discussed much. I myself was in that same thing. I write for fun, and I write for joy, and then for the sake of creating art. And as far as like you said, the marketing is totally important. But if I wasn't making money, I'd still be writing, and if I was making money, I'd still be writing. There's no time that I'm not writing. It's always going to be happening, whether it's actually pen and paper or me composing music for a film score, or me doing a screenplay, or just doing a comedy sketch with me and a couple friends that we do random skits. There's not a moment where I'm not kind of writing in a sense. So I love that, just that idea of what you're saying, that it's more, now is the opportunity for the people who are honest to God writers to be putting out things.
It's interesting how in the we're a very young industry, and it's really interesting how our industry is evolving. Like right now, we're at another crossroads. It seems to me a few years ago we talked a lot more about craft, and now all anybody wants to talk about is marketing. And I understand that continuum, but I don't think we should lose talking about craft quite so much as we have. And I think there's going to be, in 2015 especially, you'll see a lot more of a divergence. There are going to be those people who focus on teaching you how to be a indie author and do it better and sell more, and it's they're working on the business as opposed to in the business. So they're selling shovels and we're miners, and there's room for all that. I'm not against it. It's just that there's this divergence, I think, to a certain degree, where there's the people who talk about writing and how am I going to sell my next book, and then there's people who who are talking about SEO and getting affiliates. Like, how am I going to load up on sales affiliates? And I think there's a lot of overlap in that Venn diagram, particularly with mailing lists. We really need to work on mailing lists. But it's going to be interesting to see how it develops over the next 12 months, especially.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. There was a question coming from Erica in the comments. She asks, I see that you have full seasons up on Amazon, but not the individual pieces. Is this because you bundle them when the season is complete and then remove the individuals, or do you just release the whole season instead?
I started marketing this Plague of Days with serials. So the way I did it was, she's talking about my zombie apocalypse saga. I did this huge story about an autistic boy from Kansas Kansas City, Missouri, who I don't know how much I want to give away there. He he fights for the future, and it gets very psychedelic over the 3 seasons. But it starts off like a typical zombie story and then goes in a really different direction. So that's the ad. As far as the marketing of it goes, I started with it as a serial, and I sold it at 15,000 word episodes, and then I sold the whole book. And after a time, I had it up for about a year, the first season, and then I pulled those episodes. So I serialized season 1, I serialized season 2, then I put those out as books, and then I put out season 3, but I did not serialize season 3. And the reason I did not serialize season 3 was that I didn't feel at that time that Amazon was doing a good job as far as the tech wasn't there. So you had a bunch of readers who were confused because I wasn't part of 47 North or anything. So people had to get episode 1 and then remember to come back and download episode 2, and then remember to come back and download etc. for 5 episodes, and then they had to repeat for season 2. And there were people who were confused by that. And I just early this year, mid fall, I guess, I had the whole omnibus out, so it's all packaged in one big book. And I still got somebody who had just read season 1, or had just gotten around to reading episode 1. Actually, is what it was. So. I'm trying to answer your question, but don't get too lost in the weeds. But the thing is, she had just read episode 1, and she was saying, "I'm not happy that the rest of it isn't available yet." It's like, no, it's all here. I know it's confusing. I know it can be difficult, but it's all here, the whole thing. So I did tricks with the serials where you had covers that were slightly different, but all looked enough the same that you could pick them out in the also bots and that kind of thing. Serialization helped me a lot because of also bots, so I could fill up the ribbon of also bots. But it got to the point where I'm very sensitive to reviews, and when I saw those few people that were like, I don't know what to download next, I went, you know what? I'm going to just do it as books for season 3, and that's where that went.
You're the first person I've heard say that you are sensitive to reviews.
Yeah, I'm a sensitive guy. Super sweet.
That's a Canadian.
Oh, I was kidding. They're so dang nice.
Hey, we're not nice. We're compassionate.
Oh, okay.
And it's 'cause we're red and white, but we're never blue.
Never blue.
Dork.
I heard that line on Kevin Smith's Tusk the other day. That was a really weird movie, but I loved that line.
I think Erica had a follow-up question, but now I lost it. Where did it go? About the...
Yeah, she wanted to see something about Kindle Select. Are you in Kindle Select, Robert?
Oh, that's such a good question. I have begun the migration because I've got 15 books up on Amazon right now, and I have begun the migration. So I've got 3 books on the other platforms, I think, right now. My thing about Kindle Unlimited and Kindle Select, a lot of the commentary I see seems like we're talking about it as if it has to be a binary choice. It's like Team Amazon or Team everybody else kind of thing, and I understand that people are frustrated with Amazon, but I made this point in a blog post, and several people picked up on it. Just because Amazon is not as good as it used to be, that doesn't mean that the other platforms have improved at all.
Yeah,
right?
That's a great point.
The other platforms really still suck as far as discoverability goes.
Oh, yes.
It's very, very frustrating. So I don't think it has to be all one way or the other, but I've got some really long books, and it bugs me to have them in Kindle Unlimited because they're really long books. I think it makes a lot more sense to put the shorter stuff in Kindle Unlimited and work on sales funnels. So I'll be working on sales funnels more.
Sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I know a lot of people are focusing more on short stories and novellas and putting those in Kindle Unlimited. I think that makes sense if there's a larger plan. So for a lot of my books, there are characters that appear in some books that show up in other books. So there's kind of a web among the books.
Yeah.
So
I
if you're
noticed
just doing,
that on your author page. I thought, and I was just going to say, I thought that's. Do you notice some jump overs of different readers because of those characters?
A little bit with the short story collections, and a little bit with the crime novels. Although it depends on the fan, because if you're in these zombie fans are very particular. They tend to be very particular. They really want zombie stuff and not crime novels. So if I had to do it all again, I would have chosen one genre and stuck with that and dominated. But as it is, I followed my heart and I followed my muse, and I'll never do that again. I'm sorry.
Damn that! That's why I
write romance all the time. That's all about sales, right?
Yes, exactly. That's why you hear me talking about my romance book and not the only novel I've put out called Dinosaur Noir. Dinosaur Noir. Tyrannosaurus Rex, private detective. Does he smoke cigarettes? Of course he does.
Of course he does. He's a dinosaur.
It's hard to reach up to his mouth with those little arms, though.
It's like a millions of years of evolution dinosaurs, so they've kind of evolved to the point where they're much shorter, bipedal, they're very humanoid as far as features go, and there's kind of like how with humans, how there's different races of humans, there's different races of lizards also cohabitating Earth in this silly mystery.
You have an interesting mind. I want to hang out with you more.
I know.
Yeah.
Cool guy.
The other thing,
I think we'd get along just well.
Yeah, just well. The other thing I kind of wanted to pursue with novellas, as far as I talked about there being kind of a web between stories. If you're looking at Kindle Unlimited and you're thinking, okay, well, I'll just do short stories, I'll just do novellas. And I'm doing that through some pen names and stuff too. But the thing that I think it makes more sense to look at it a bit more strategically. So if you're doing prequels or sequels or working in the same world, but there's some kind of call to action at the end of these novellas and short stories, or if you are building a book, serializing basically, so you have a bundle to sell at the end, so you can eventually have a higher price for the bundle. Because that has a couple of advantages. One is, it's a sales funnel to your higher priced books, but I think that it can flesh out the world so readers like it. The other thing I really noticed that, I don't know if it surprised me so much, I guess it surprised me how much a difference it made when I came out with This Plague of Days Omnibus. That's all 3 books in one big book. Mm-hmm. So Season 1, Season 2, Season 3, in one book, and a lot of people really like the omnibus because they really want the whole thing at once, and that's special. And I notice, like, I just started another serial, and it's not moving as fast as I'd like, but once I pump out another 2 books, so I have a trilogy to bundle, I think people go, oh, okay, now I've got a huge reading experience to get to, as opposed to, oh, this is just the first in the series, I'll wait. I see a lot of that, I think.
I have a newbie question, and then there's 2 questions on the site. And this is going to be a really dumb question, but that's why you have me on the show. So, what is the point of the omnibus, or whatever you're calling it? Like, why would they not just buy them individually? Why do you do that?
Because a bunch of them want to have the entire saga as one reading experience, and if they don't know me, when only season 1 was available, they thought, okay, is he going to get season 2 and season 3 done? Mm-hmm. So maybe they're looking at it kind of like a Kickstarter that, well, it might not ever happen.
Oh, okay.
I think if you're new to an author, it feels like a gamble. Like, I don't want to be left hanging. Nobody wants to be left hanging.
Right.
So, from what I can see, the season 1 has the most reviews by far, but when I look at the sales, it goes straight to the omnibus. So there's actually a dip and a skip over of season 2 and season 3. It's like season 1's big, and then they're going to the omnibus.
Okay, cool.
So, okay, well, actually, Michelle, let's take the ones from the site first. I want to get those. I'll follow up.
There was one that just popped up from Erica, and she just asked for Robert, what do you think is the current state of the zombie genre, and where or what do you think is going to happen to it?
These things go in waves, and it'll never go away. There's a huge appetite for it, partially because of The Walking Dead. I kind of went in a different direction, away from the Walking Dead, but there's enough of that action in there to satisfy the people who want a little bit of gore. Those people. What are you saying?
Well, there's something about the diehard Walking Dead fans that scares me to I don't know, bejesus, I guess that's the word. It scares the bejesus out of me.
They're only predicting the future. Starts next Tuesday. Be ready.
That's right.
The zombies are not the Walking Dead. It's actually just the humans that are the Walking Dead, because, like, death is kind of coming for us no matter what in the end of it.
That's exactly it.
Oh, come on, give me a break. I can't deal with zombies anymore. I'm glad that it's, that people love it, and it's just not for me.
Yeah, to each his own, right? To each his own.
I watch every zombie movie.
Yeah, I'm so glad that people are still loving zombies. Like I got out of it. I was neck deep in the Romero back in the day, but I don't know.
I always say better zombies than flashy vampires, right? I mean,
hey, they're not. They don't flash. They sparkle.
They sparkle.
They sparkle. Don't forget, they sparkle.
Twilight just haunts me. But anyway,
it sounds like it does scare you.
Is there
all the reasons
involved? Does it scare your bejesus?
Bejesus. Bejesus up and runs. Robert, I want to talk to you a little more about the genre hopping, because one thing that I noticed as Michelle was talking about you before we had you on is, like, you kind of went all over the place, and most authors recommend stick with a genre, stick with a certain thing. So was that by design, by default, and how's it working for you and how you juggle pen names and
that was by nature.
Okay.
So I mentioned that I have a problem with authority, and that doesn't always serve me well. So, I've been fired. But look, if hitting a bad guy with a brick in the face is wrong, I don't want to be right. That's, I just feel that when I look back at the previous 3 years and the stuff that I've written, I was following my heart, and I wrote the stuff that I wanted to write, got some stuff out of my system. That's probably good. Moving forward, I think that I'm growing up a little bit, and so is the industry as far as this. I think we're going to begin to do the things that we haven't been interested in doing. So everything that I do is a labor of love, certainly, but there's other stuff that has to be done that I haven't been enthusiastic about. So I finally set up my mailing list better, and I am going to change my strategy on my podcasts. So there's some stuff that takes some time, some technical stuff in the background that I think all of us have something we don't like to do, certainly, right. And that's probably a good sign that that's stuff that we need to do.
Oh, good! I love that. Yeah, especially as a business owner, right? I mean, right. But that's what that. I'll go, Xavier. Talk about
girls, don't fight.
When we first started off, and you were talking about, it's marketing now versus the craft, and I totally get what you're saying on that. But one of the things that I think we're not maybe necessarily addressing as much as we should are the nuts and bolts of types of things like you were just talking about. Like, I need to be better and sharper with my mailing list, and I need to make sure my podcast is focused and hitting the right audience and those sort of things. So that's not necessarily marketing per se, but it's good business sense. And if you're going to write and make money, you got to be a business person, right? I mean and I think that I'm reading from your blog that you're behind that. You got to keep the business hat on and do the right things that a business owner does. Otherwise, especially with all the competition, right? You're just going to be lost. Now, Xavier, go.
No, I was just going to make a joke. It doesn't matter anymore.
I'm sorry. I took your thunder away.
It was just, I was just going to say, since you were saying, the things that you don't like doing are probably the things that you don't like to do, I should say that. Well, I do hate breathing, but I do know I have to do it. It's a bad joke, so go ahead. It didn't have to wait. That's yeah. That's my input.
Okay.
Wild card.
Thank you.
Michelle, how are we doing on questions from the site? You got anything?
No new ones besides Kate asked a while back, it was 12 minutes ago. Are serials still popular? Like, would you recommend doing it, or would you recommend just doing book, box set?
They're not popular with 47 North. Amazon's not promoting them well. With the pre-orders, it's a little bit easier to do for indies now.
But don't you already have to have a readership to do pre-orders?
Yeah, and hopefully you'll already have it or build it. It depends on what your strategy is for the long term. If in fact you have a long-term strategy, as opposed to do it now, because some people just don't want to just can't wait to pull the trigger. As far I wouldn't do it again myself. That I'm not going to tell anybody not to do it. I would just say that it's harder for an independent publisher to do it because of the technical aspects of, if it's done through Amazon, that it's automatically downloaded to your Kindle when it's available. Whereas with us, we have to have a readership that keeps on coming back for the episodes. And it worked for me for the one big experiment that I did. I don't know if, the thing is that is really my flagship product. If you know, oh, he said product.
No.
And maybe it would have taken off anyway. But I think that the serial tactic made it happen faster and got it to take off for me. But serials now, I just because of the reader confusion, they're just not primed for it. That's the reason I wouldn't do it. But you might be much braver than I am.
I am not much braver than you. And I have another question.
Yeah.
I was talking, I can't remember if it was you I was talking to earlier today or someone else, on the pre-order thought. I heard twice in the same day, you're going to fail if you don't do pre-orders, and then somebody else, Matt Morris, said, don't do pre-orders or you'll never make any money. So how do you decide what to do and what not to do?
I don't do pre-orders. I don't quite understand just because you can do it doesn't mean that you need to or should.
Mm-hmm.
I think that depending on what your strategy is, maybe pre-orders are for you. If you've got a huge mailing list that you're working hard, it could be effective, but most of us don't have that, so I don't think that pre-orders are that big a deal. A lot of the stuff that I've let go, I've let happen kind of organically, and it's funny. I've heard that too. Like it's very much that team mentality of it's one thing or the other, and I think the answer is it's going to depend on variables, and one of those variables is, do you have a huge mailing list? If you have a huge mailing list, maybe pre-orders are for you.
That's what I've heard. The thing that everyone keeps saying, the only two variables. Oh, it cut out. Sorry, what was that?
I said, and unleash the Kraken.
Well, I was going to say, the only two things that people keep saying, like they'll tell you, do these 18 things and you'll be a success. Don't do these 18 things or you'll die a horrible death. Everyone says
wait, there's be successful or die? I didn't realize those were the stakes.
You signed up for it. They always say email list, and they always say write more books. That's the only two things I've consistently heard. Everything else is just like a crapshoot.
Well, certainty is very calming.
What's that now?
Certainty. People love certainty.
Right.
Dumbest people I know are the most certain.
Yeah. Very good.
Very good. We won't, but
yeah, I was just I'm trying to hold in the laughter. That's too funny.
Wade in the after party.
Wade,
in the after party, will you show us your laminated list? I sense you have one. Anyway.
No, he's from Oregon. He doesn't laminate anything. That's bad for the environment.
That's right.
So, I guess what I want to get back to is just that there are a lot of variables, and it's going to depend on things like, do you have a large readership already? How many books have you put out? I've helped out some friends who just had one book, and they had the expectations that people could legitimately have after 10 books, because it's like, this is my one stab, this is the big book, this has got to do it or nothing.
Because they all think they've written the next Twilight or Fault in Our Stars or something.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is that it's really sad because it's even more nuanced than that, because you can write something really good and it doesn't necessarily matter. The stuff that I am most proud of, that I think is possibly some of the best stuff that I've read, has the fewest reviews on Amazon.
That's sad.
Yeah.
That's just life.
Yeah, it is.
I'm proud of all my stuff, but some stuff rises to the top, and it's not necessarily the stuff you think should be.
That's what I thought about 2014 as I was looking back. I mean, I'm not saying that any of it's like terrible. I'm not saying that, but there's. I mean, I look at something like Divergent, which I have students reading constantly, right? And I mean, it's selling like hotcakes. It's very much okay. I mean, it's an okay book. It's not nothing I would ever want to buy myself. But like you say, Robert, it's not. It doesn't have to be great to sell well. Maybe that's one.
That's the corollary. Yeah, there's definitely stuff that is marketed really well, and it has some buttons to really catch fire. I mean, we shouldn't underestimate that. I mean, a lot of it comes down to a lot of plotting and action and good dialogue and jokes and writing that captures imaginations. Like it may not be to anybody's particular taste, but I'm very cautious of those guys. Like when I was in university, I knew a bunch of guys who were very snobby about their music, and their rule was if everybody liked it, then it couldn't be any good. And I don't believe that either.
Yeah.
It's a complex world, man. It's a complex world.
That's right. That's right. And people like what they like, and if they want to buy it, then they want to buy it. And hey, I would be glad to sell it to them, by the way, too. So, Michelle, you have a question from the site.
Yes, it's from Warius. And of course, now I start choking. It says, this is a question for all of you, and I can't wait to answer it because I'm going to have a totally different answer. It says, what do you feel the initial endeavor should be for a would-be author? Writing a novel with the initial attitude of getting that one novel published, which you kind of spoke to that a little bit, and expecting it to be a success, or writing a novel for the fun of it? If you do it for the fun of it, do you feel it's a bad idea to post the chapters on sites or blogs to see what people think of those chapters? And I have like a nerdy, I don't sell millions of books answer, but I want Robert to answer it first.
Okay. My thinking is, as far as the first part of the question, if I've understood it correctly, if you're not having fun writing it, then that cancels out the possibility that it's going to be great.
Right.
If you're not having any fun writing it, nobody's going to have fun reading it. When I write, I disappear into that world, whatever it is, whether I'm, trapping somebody in a car and torturing them to near death, or if I'm in the North Atlantic. Part of my mind is in the North Atlantic right now. Mm-hmm. So it's just it's very dangerous to me. Do you think, well, it's either got to be literary good or commercial, or fun or serious? I think that everything that I've read that I really enjoyed, that Venn diagram was very close to one circle, not two. And there was a second part of the question. What was it? About posting it on other places like Wattpad and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay. My thoughts on stuff like Wattpad. It's not a selling platform, it's a social platform. If you're not prepared to be social there, then don't waste your time. It has a demographic of, I think, more females and males, and a younger group.
Young.
Yeah, definitely young.
So if you're doing YA, that might be a good place to be. If you are, if you've got a new take on a One Direction novel, that might be the spot. That's sort of a cliche and a cheap shot, though, because I've seen some good stuff on Wattpad. A friend of mine has used Wattpad and likes it a lot.
Had 3 takes on One Direction. Then you might have some improvement.
Yes, the 3D of One Direction. I'm already lost in the math. But as far as posting stuff there, I have done it as I was hoping to get beta readers. Didn't really get beta readers, but I wasn't social enough on the site. I've got my whole life is a massive time management problem, and Wattpad was one area where I could not invest the time to give it a decent shot. So if you have that time and you have the right material for that site, i.e. more YA kind of stuff, then I would certainly experiment there. Be aware that when you post one chapter, it'll send out an email to everybody who's subscribed. If you post the whole book, you'll be spamming everybody because it posts an email out for every chapter that you put out. So it's very dangerous with Wattpad and with Facebook groups. Like if you're in a whole lot of Facebook groups and there's somebody going through their Facebook groups and they're posting the same message to all those Facebook groups. I know somebody who subscribed to 70 Facebook groups, and somebody else went through all those Facebook groups, and the guy's email just got blown up. And what it leads to, both with Wattpad, I think, and with those Facebook group notifications, is massive email deletions, where you just click a box at the top and hit Shift and click the box at the bottom, and you delete it all without ever looking at any of it, because you're overwhelming people. So if you're going to use something like Wattpad or Facebook groups, dole it out slower.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Michelle, you wanted to answer it. I want to hear your answer because you were almost kind of giddy. So.
I was, because I'm goofy.
Prove your giddiness.
I was just gonna say that through this podcast, when I was just listening to it, I made friends with a bunch of people, and then I would send them stuff. And so I think if you do like a one-on-one thing with people who know what you're doing, you're not spamming them, and then also Goodreads. I love Goodreads, but I don't do chapters at a time. Otherwise, he was asking about posting them on blogs or on a blog, but then you have to worry about getting traffic to your blog, and there's just like a million things to think about all the time.
One thing I'll pick out of that question too, and I don't know if I seriously take my own advice, but I'll put it out there anyway.
But you'll give it.
Yeah, but I'll give it. Worrying about whether something is good or not, it kind of goes back to the conversation we're just having, right? I mean, there's people that hate Gone with the Wind, right? Probably one of the best movies ever made, and one of the best books, and you know. I mean, if you're worried about everybody liking what you write, then you don't want to publish, because it's just not going to happen. I don't care. I mean, John Green's a great writer. You talk about Fault in Your Stars, good book. I don't think it's his best. And I've read all John Green books. I mean, I'm a big fan. So,
Sacrilege! I mean, how dare you, sir? How dare you?
I know. So. Yeah, so that part to me, with the question, kind of really just raised, red flags.
Yeah, the concept of good, what is that?
Right.
Like, to one man's Casablanca will be another man's Dude, Where's My Car?
Yes.
So like it's such a subject to bash around, and as. I guess really, are you trying to fight for the good of what you think is good, or are you going for what the market thinks is good? And I think both can be up and down a lot.
Right.
Because like not only predicting the market is one thing, like you can jump trends. Trends will be jumped by any person who has like the right opportunistic spirit and wants to make that extra coin, of course. But at the same time, your own tastes will change and fluctuate as much as any market predict about. Like if you're trying to predict how you are going to feel for writing-wise, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the line, it's the same as predicting as how you think zombie books are going to, hold up in market.
Right.
How much do you...
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, you go ahead. I've talked too much already.
No, I was going to say that to your point, Seth Godin said in one of his very pithy blogs recently that every bestseller is a surprise. Every bestseller is a surprise.
Ooh,
That's true.
Nice quote.
So when I worked in traditional publishing, and we sat in sales meetings, and the editorial staff would roll out their next picks, and they'd go, and this is going to be the one that's going to save the company. And it wasn't. Ever.
Ever.
There was the stuff that they could put a big marketing push behind. And then there was the stuff that the readers really wanted. And if you want to know what the market wants, it might not be the best thing to ask an English major in downtown Toronto who never talks to readers.
Yeah.
So
That's a good point.
Don't talk to English teachers ever if you want to be a genre writer.
and that's not to crap all over English majors. It's just that
I can because I'm one of them. So.
Oh, good. Well, I can crap on you. Okay, but no, my larger point is that when we look at what takes off and what doesn't, it's often unpredictable. Like when I was a freelance writer for magazines, I would write a column and I'd say to my editor, we're going to get a lot of mail on this one. Brace yourself. This is going to be the one that we're going to get a lot of negative feedback. And then I was always wrong.
Crickets.
and crickets. And then something that I thought was incredibly innocuous would set people off. But even like these kind of discussions that we have about the market, for instance, they're very valuable. Like, I'm really glad to be here and talk to you guys about this stuff. This is all I do when I talk on my blog at chazwrites.com, all the stuff. But on the other hand, there is another aspect to this, is that writers talk to other writers. And a lot of the stuff that we think is important isn't necessarily what we would think is important if we just had our reader's hat on and didn't look at everything as a writer.
Mm-hmm.
So to get way back to the question that started us off on this, it pretty much comes down to, do I want literary, do I want commercial, all this stuff. Just write this story that you want to write and do your best. And God, that's useless to you, isn't it? But do your best.
It's kind of like being a parent sometimes. It's like, well, send them out there.
But also do it. You still have
like
to just do it and get it done.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just that ultimately, whether the talent is there or not, or whether you develop your craft, that's why we have to get back to talking about fundamentals in a larger scale, I think. Because when you look at what you're trying to accomplish with your work, it's really just you and what you like, and then you hope that everybody else decides to get on your crazy train, instead of trying to write to what you think other people like.
Yeah, that's good. That's solid.
Yeah.
One thing. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say I love the metaphor of the crazy train. I think if more people were kind of encouraging that attitude of just kind of, being an individual and attracting that. I think, as writers, and I think even readers are mostly attracted to a person that they can get behind. And when it comes to a writer, if they're a true fan, they follow that writer across their body of work. And half of it is the writing, but also it is the writer, and that's, the great thing about nowadays is there's such interactivity between reader and writer, thanks to Goodreads and all that touring and all that great stuff. So I think selling yourself as a person, a real genuine person, and as a personality, you don't fake it, be the person and be the writer that you actually are. And as long as, you're honest enough and you put out the right amount of work, you're going to find people attracted to that.
Mm-hmm.
Totally agree. And one of the kind of piggyback on that with something that Robert mentioned before, we're talking about Wattpad and stuff. It looks like to me there's going to be a lot more of those types of channels coming down the road, right? There's going to be more opportunity for us. I mean, we talk a lot about Amazon and maybe like with the serials and stuff, but I know there's going to be more development, right? The technology is catching up and maybe surpassing, but and so there's going to be that opportunity to, like you say, Xavier, be yourself, interact with your readers, and give them what they want, and with different platforms to be able to do that from. So we worry. I think writers, well, maybe we're narcissistic anyway, but we worry too much.
I love myself so much.
Yeah, it's like, but we always want to be loved too. It's like, oh, but am I good enough? I don't know. I hear that a lot from people, right? Am I good enough? And I don't know. I was watching an interview from Stephen King the other day in his latest book, and he still said, "I don't know how good it is." I'm thinking, holy crap, dude! How can you not? But that's part of the stuff that we do, right? So it's
and you would have thought that he would have got out of that after doing the whole pen name project with the whole Richard Bachman thing, doing just that, trying to find out if people liked his writing rather than just liked his name.
Right.
Yeah, well, every book is it feels like an equal risk. I wrote a book this last fall that I ended up shelving because I wasn't happy enough with it yet. But I think it's frustrating especially for newer writers who are looking for that golden key of advice of what can you do, and it comes back to a lot of the same old saws. And sometimes I feel like I can be a cheerleader and a coach to some people, but really it comes down to slogging it. And so a lot of the advice seems to devolve down into the same kind of like, go get him, Tiger. It's like when SEO people say content is king. You heard that phrase over and over again. Content is king. That's a slogan that is supposed to be so important, and I think that doesn't really mean anything. Like it means write good.
Dur.
That's not as catchy though.
Nobody's trying to write bad.
Michelle, was there a question from the site that we had?
Yes, I think it's a version of the same question, so I'm going to read it and we'll see if we can get it answered properly. It says, for everyone, including Wade and Xavier, do you feel it's better to come up with an entire world and setting for your books? This is talking about world building.
Cool.
And I'm going to try to make sure I understand it properly, but I probably won't. So, I lost it. Oh, do you feel it's better to come up with an entire world and setting, or to come up with a basic premise of the world and story ideas? I've done work with the former, which is create the world first and then write the story from it, and tried to come up with a hook from that. But I'm not sure if I'd ever be able to write a full cohesive novel from that versus a glorified collection of short stories. So I guess, I think what he's saying is, do you suggest world building first or getting the storyline and then building around that? And if that's not right, then please tell me.
Who's the question from, Michelle?
It's from Warrius again.
Okay.
Yep. Who wants to go first?
Not me.
Okay, I'll go. Just
do it, Xavier.
I'll do it, Wade.
Lay them busters down, Xavier.
Get to the chopper. I had to say that live. I had to. I personally, I'd started off being the kind of writer that would kind of just go head into it, and the whole Panther thing, just acting under the muse, listening to the inspirations, and I really I lost sight of that when I went to film school and then was doing screenwriting. So, and that when you're doing screenwriting, you better know the end of the movie, otherwise, hey, you don't have a movie. So,
that's true.
Yeah. When it came to when I started going back to prose, I've taken that approach. I think you always have to have a goal, and even if that goal ends up changing down the line as you're writing, it's still going to have some vague similarities to that end goal you initially set out, rather than if you had no goal in mind whatsoever. Because it's going to go somewhere crazy if you don't have anything else kind of set in stone. As far as outlining and how strict you want to go with it, that's up to you. But I do think that working backwards, in a sense, as far as the plotting stage goes, I think that's more helpful, especially if it's going to be your first book. Definitely consider plotting and look at the 7-act structure, not 3 acts. 3 acts are bullshit.
What?
Ooh, okay, we'll have to get Garrett on here to argue with you. That'd be awesome. I don't know who I am to say, but I'm going to do my real short so I can get to Robert because he'll have something very insightful and better to
I'm getting short under the pressure. Wade, go on.
I see the question as, do you want it more character-centered or more world-centered? I mean, I think of like fantasy authors and stuff where world is so important. I totally agree with Xavier. If you don't have an end in mind, you tend to wander off. Now, if you're not under pressure to get something done, sometimes that's fun to do. I like to do that to see where stories go sometimes. But I think if you're doing the for a living thing, you better make use of your time, because if you go off the wrong way, you waste a lot of time. But I personally kind of like the I can't remember where the quote came from, and I should, but I can't remember. It's like, you take your character, have them climb a tree, and then set the tree on fire and see what they do. And I kind of like that, the idea of putting characters in bad situations, and I like to get to know people, even if they are in my head. So that's where I tend to center my stuff around. And then the world comes around, well, so who is this guy, and where does he live? Oh, yeah, he lives in Oklahoma or somewhere, or wherever. And so you can put him wherever. So that's kind of how I look at it. Now, the real answer from Robert.
Yeah. I don't think we have quite enough time. So good night, everybody. Okay, a few quick things about this. The old saw about science fiction is that you want to have the science, but the fiction has to. The science has to support the fiction, not the other way around. So as far as world building goes, I remember having a conversation with a writer who told me this fantastic setting, but he had no story, no characters, no action. It was just this kind of fantastical setting. And he talked at length about this fantastical setting. I think it was set in the rings of Saturn. And finally I said, "But what's the story, man?"
Mm-hmm.
And he's doomed. I killed him. It was a mercy thing, okay? So
Yeah.
Had to do it. Go to the people.
Yeah, some people think things are wrong, but so. As far as world building goes, if it's your first book, I would recommend outlining. That's really good advice that I didn't do. I wouldn't take it if I were you, because I'm not telling you what to. I don't tell anybody what to do.
This is coming from a guy who doesn't like authority.
Exactly. So if you
Right.
want a helpful suggestion, it would be to outline and create a story Bible, a book Bible. So for Game of Thrones. You have to. I assume that at some point, George R. R. Martin has a notebook that has boiled leather. I've got to get boiled leather in there 27 times in the first book.
Yeah,
so,
I'm pretty sure he would have to, because the amount of detail on the meals that are in Game of Thrones, I'm pretty sure it's partly autobiographical.
Yeah.
Just like, today I had lamb stew with peas and beans and all of these things. Yeah, and pretty much anything else that I could find around the house.
And a boiled hog's head. So as far as having some kind of Bible to refer to, if you've got a very complex world, then that's it's all the more important to have a story Bible. So it goes beyond, this character has blue eyes. It's this character is from the Seventh Kingdom, and this is their heraldry. If you're going so deep that it's like George R. R. Martin kind of stuff of, what's the sigil of that house and this house, and oh my God, head of the king, all that stuff. So, but personally, I'm a pantser, and I learned to write, and I tell everybody this on possibly every podcast, so if you've heard me before, I'm sorry, but it's really good advice, is if you want to learn how to write, you must read, and you must read William Goldman. Most people know him as the guy behind The Princess Bride, and he's I believe, the greatest still living. He's not quite dead yet. Still living American author.
Just partly dead. Just partly dead.
That guy. Everybody knows him for movies that he's not writing anymore. He's retired, I guess. But he's got a long list of movies that people are familiar with. So if you're a cinephile, you know Marathon Man and All the President's Men and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and all these kind of big movies from decades ago now. What they should know him for is his novel writing. If you can find The Color of Light, I think it's actually out of print, which is a travesty. Best book I ever read. And when the key thing that I have taken on into my writing is he plays with the reader. So in the moment that you think you know what's going to happen next, that's when he pulls the rug out from under you, and you go an alternate way. And so it's full of surprises and reversals, and it's incredibly cinematic writing. But as far as to learn how to plot something complex, go back to William Goldman and read William Goldman. I cannot recommend it enough to anyone.
Nice.
That's the best tip of the day.
Yep.
Yes, that was great.
Yep. Not only read writers, stressing that, read, but also read William Goldman.
Oh, guess what? We've burned an hour already. This went by like nothing. Robert, you are awesome to talk to.
Well, thank you. You guys were just so desperate to talk about self-help for stoners, and you didn't get to it.
Oh, no!
Here's what we're gonna do.
Yeah, we better end the podcast now.
Yeah, hey, Xavier, we'll fix this. We'll have Robert back on if he'll have us. If you'll have him. Would you
well,
put him on the spot right now?
A lot of the questions were hard, and I it's kind of drafty. You guys insisted that I go pantsless, and
No. That was your idea. You volunteered
Just
that.
because Michelle goes pantsless doesn't mean everybody else has to.
Yeah, that's just how us boys do it.
Yeah, I'd be
Or
glad to
maybe
come
it's
back.
just
Have a good time.
it might just be a Canadian thing. I don't know.
Not in
No,
this weather, man.
it's
Not in this weather.
All right. So
14.
I heard you, Robert. Though you said yes, you would come back on. So we will have you back on. So
Bueno.
that was too good.
Nice Italian.
Mucho apreciado.
Okay. Well, just remind everybody. Yeah, and actually, I think someone was asking recently. I can't remember now. The name escapes me, but iTunes will be back up and running very soon. All the back episodes will be on there as well. So keep checking, and we'll post on our Facebook page and such other social media sites when we get that back up and running. But that will be happening soon. But if you can give us a thumbs up on YouTube, check us out on Stitcher. Leave us a review when iTunes is rolling again. All that good stuff. We'd really appreciate it. We thank all the live viewers and with all your questions and stuff. That was awesome.
We had some new ones tonight, so it was nice to meet you.
Yeah, thanks for coming over.
Yes.
I'm sorry if we didn't get to your questions. Sorry.
Thank you for converting to the dark side.
Robert, where can people find you? Where would you like them to find you?
What you need to do is go to allthatchaz.com to subscribe to for stuff about my deals and new books coming out and podcasts and whatnot. Go to allthatchaz.com. Chaz is with 2 Z's, 2 Z's if you're nasty.
You want a radio guy? Jeez, that was good.
Double nasty.
He sounds like the Honest Taylor guy.
After
This episode
party.
of Self-Publishing Podcast has been brought to you by Bentley's Rocket Wax. I wax my rocket every day.
This podcast has not been brought to you by Audible. This is not brought to you by Squarespace.
And definitely not brought to you by the U.S. Postal Service.
And good taste is far away.
Okay, I can see where this is going real quick. So quickly, if you want to do the after party, put your name in the comments, and we'll get the invites out. Michelle will collect them for me because she's like that. And we will see you all next week. I forgot who we're having on next week. We might not have anybody on. Xavier might just do it.
No. We have Susan Butler on next week.
Do we have Susan back on next week?
We do.
Oh, God, I love it.
She's pretty.
Yeah, should be fun to listen to. Xavier will have to really hold the reins back on that one. So I'm looking forward to that. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Thank you again, Robert. Good night, y'all. And is that Canadian? No, that's not Canadian.
That's not Canadian.
Quit while you're ahead, Wade.